Friends, and welcome back to my channel. This is Marla, and I'm so glad that you're joining me today for another Scrappy Tail Crafts video. Today, we're going to be creating an A2 card using the new A7 Sunflower Bookframe cover plate die. This die was meant to coordinate with the A7 book pop-up from Scrappy Tales, which is an amazing, obviously, pop-up die. Here's a look at it. There's a long strip that is going to be the book spine. And for my card today, I cut out several of those strips and I am going to use them to create a colorful background. There is also an A7 book cover. As you can see, that nice frame that you can use on a card. We have the sunflower, and the sunflower comes with two pieces. There is the background, and then there are the petals. We have the leaf that has the solid background and the detail, the sentiment that says, "You are my sunshine," with the shadow die, and then there are two different centers. I ended up using both of them on my sunflower today. So let's jump into our card. As I mentioned, I did use that book spine to cut out several strips of cardstock using Nina Solar White 80-pound cardstock. I'm going to be using my Catherine Pooler inks today to ink up my strips. I'm starting with the color apricot. Some of these are a little juicier than others. I do need to use my re-inkers because these are the mini ink cubes. I do go through the ink a little bit quicker than you would if you had a full-size pad. This one here is going to be the ginger, and you're going to see that it definitely is a lot juicier than the apricot was. And I am using two complementary colors in in orange, green, and pink. So I have the apricot and the ginger, which is a light orange, and then the darker ginger color. For my greens, I'm using the lighter color is going to be wintergreen, and then the darker color is going to be matcha. So I thought that having just a lighter and a darker version would complement all of the colors together. I did want to go with something that was a little bit non-traditional. These are the spa colors, which are more of the muted tones, so they're going to be a little bit darker than, say, the party collection, which would be really bright and spring-like. So I did stick with those darker colors. For my pinks, I used two of my favorites. The first one is going to be the pink champagne, and then the second one is going to be the sparkling berry. So I have a little bit of a non-traditional color palette here. I pulled out two different card bases. I had a white card base, and then I had a craft card base that was sitting on my desk. And so I am going to show you later on in this video how I auditioned the two different card bases and determined that I was going to go ahead and go with the craft. I thought that it had more of a fall feel to it than the white did. So now we have all of these pieces that are going to be part of our background inked up, and we're going to start on the beautiful sunflower. It kind of looks like it's crocheted. I really love the lacy feel of the top layer. For the top layer, these are all again cut out of Nina Solar White 80-pound cardstock. And I started with the honey whip, which is going to be the top layer of the flower, and I left the bottom layer the white color for contrast. For my leaves, I used green tea. And then these are the center of the sunflowers. You do not need to use both of them. If you use the smaller one, it's going to give the flower a different style. I chose to use both of them, and I did ink them up using Sandcastle ink. I do like to add dimension, so I'm going to just align about 3 of these together to give a little bulk to the flower, and then I'll adhere it to the base. I did want to talk about the style of the flower and the leaves. It it is a little bit confusing when you first start looking at it because you think that it's going to align perfectly. And then after fiddling with this for a little bit, I realized that the bottom layer is not going to align perfectly with the top layer. It kind of has a little bit of a whimsical feel to the design, so it does not center perfectly. I'm going to mess with this just a little bit. Now, these ones lined up obviously together perfectly. There's little splits in some of the sunflower petals. And so what I did was just found the ones that matched and aligned those easily. But here you're going to see that I'm just going to be trying to figure out how this aligns perfectly. And then I'm just going to realize that it doesn't. So I do use that wide section that is separated. And I figured where the wide section was on the top layer, realized it wasn't going to align perfectly, and that was the way that the die was created. And so I just kind of set it aside, and I'm going to move on to the petals. And again, the petals are going to be the same way. They are not going to align perfectly. You see how they align because there are indentations that indicate where, which direction and how that top layer is supposed to go. But again, it's not going to line up perfectly. So you don't have to worry about messing around with that too much like I was doing because, again, this was my first time using this. I cut it out and I put this whole card together. I never do a prototype of any of the cards. I always create on the fly. So when you see me creating with the die set and you see how easy or difficult or whatever it is to use, that is the true nature of that die. So here is where I'm auditioning the white top folding card panel. I am using an A2 size card panel, and I'm auditioning the white, and I like the white. I think the white is really pretty, but when I put it on the craft cardstock, again, this is Nina craft cardstock, and when I put it on the Nina craft, I really like it a lot better. I just think that it has, again, that fall feel or fall vibe to it, and so that's the way that I ended up putting the card together. I do need to color the sentiment. I was thinking that I wanted to color it the same color that I used. I wanted to transition that yellow into the sentiment. So I am going to ink it up with some of that whipped honey. Again, I did die cut it 3 different times. I started with this first layer to determine whether I liked this shade of yellow or if I wanted to go maybe a little bit darker. This does dry back a little bit, so it is a little bit softer. So I went with a darker a darker whipped honey, and then I'm going to be a little bit more light-handed with one of them. And I ended up going with the lighter version versus the heavier application of the whipped honey. I really liked the light yellow just a little bit better. But I did it 3 different times, and then I'm just again auditioning it, making sure that I like that color, and I do. So I'll remove my mat. That is one of those Altenew mats that go in their stamp wheel, and I use that quite frequently for my ink blending. I really like the way that it holds on to my mini ink pads, and it also holds on to my die cut pieces a little bit better than trying to ink blend on my glass mat. I'm using my, okay, I always forget the name of this. This is that Misty glue press, I think is what it's called. And I'm still really liking it. It has a really fine application of the glue. And so I'm able to get it with minimal, when I put these together, it doesn't squish the glue out because I don't get heavy gloppy applications of it. And so I really like that about this glue press. I always start, or I try to, I should say, start on one end, especially with a beautiful intricate die cut like this one. Again, it says "You Are My Sunshine," but it is a very fine die cut. And so I started on the right-hand side of that die cut, aligned the right, then I aligned the middle, and then I finally pressed down the left-hand side, and that just helps me get it aligned a little bit easier rather than trying to put that whole delicate die cut together. And even though I have the wet glue, because it is so delicate, it can easily break if I were to slide it up and down to adjust it as I would maybe a thicker die cut. So again, starting on the right side and then aligning that, making sure that the center is aligned before I press down the left-hand side. And there we go. We have all three layers. I'm going to use this shadow layer, keeping it white like I did with the sunflowers and with the petals. And then I'm just going to adhere the sentence, "You Are My Sunshine," to that shadow die. I do use my scissors to clean up a couple of spaces where I did, when you first press the glue press, sometimes you get a thicker layer of glue. And so I'm just cleaning that up I thought I was using my scissors, but I guess I was using my reverse tweezers. I'm going to go back to my sunflower and get this adhered. And then once I adhere it to the backing, we're going to start assembling our card. So I did want to go a little bit on the diagonal with my die cut pieces. I decided to put my sentiment down first. I am going to put it a little bit more right of center, and that's because I do know that I'm going to put those strips down and I want to be able to have a little bit of wiggle room. Where the head of the shadow is going to be, I want to make sure that those strips are not going to be completely touching it. So I do, it's a little bit taller on the left side than it is on the right. I hope that makes sense, but you'll see when I put it together. So I did add it a little bit more right of center, but I put it down first so I knew where my strips would go. I wanted to make sure that I had plenty of room for my sentiment. And then you could put the strips on if you wanted to horizontally, but I wanted to go a little bit on the diagonal to just give a little bit more interest to the design. And again, I'm using the dark color at the bottom, the light color at the top, and I'll repeat that with each of the color combinations. I do add a little bit of foam tape to the back of my sunflower. I did want a little bit more dimension on that, even though I did add 3 layers of the top to give it a little bit more heft. I did want to add a little bit more dimension. I like that, especially with flowers. When I put the leaves, I tuck the leaves underneath. That really is helpful just to have that little bit of dimension. So I'm just figuring out where I'm going to want my pieces. I do need to use my Tim Holtz scissors. I'll use my long scissors. I am a terrible cutter. I have said this for many years. I cut worse than a 3-year-old. In fact, I think my granddaughter probably cuts better than I do. So it takes me, it's not a one snip for me. I do have to work at it a little bit more to get all of this cut straight. I don't know where my guillotine trimmer is. I do have the Tim Holtz guillotine trimmer, and I have no idea where that's at. So that would be an easy way to trim these off. But because I didn't have that, I did do it with scissors. I did a pretty decent job getting it straight. And then we're going to just go into that sunflower and add that little bit of dimension using some dimensional tape. So this die set, as I mentioned, does coordinate with the book pop-up. Sabrina is the master of inner what's the word that I'm looking for? She is the master of interactive, thank you, interactive cards, and the book pop-up is absolutely beautiful, but my goal is always to show more than one way to be able to use her beautiful dies. And so again, I am an A2 card maker for the most part. Occasionally I'll make a 5x7 card, and I wanted to show that this can be used. I love being able to have perfectly aligned strips and coloring them for my cards. And so I think that that just adds a lot of interest to the card. Here's a close-up of my final project. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I will have all of the products linked in the description box below. Until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day. Thanks for watching.